the amounts and types of movement for preschoolers. I don't have the little booklet here with me, but you can buy the little booklet. It's Active Start Birth through 5 is the booklet, and you can purchase that at the SHAPE website. It's the Society for Health and Physical Education. That's like the national governing body for PE. And they have guidelines for, as I said, birth through 5, and then they have elementary, I think, or maybe K through middle, and then middle through high school. I can't remember. I'm not a PE person, so don't know those older age groups. But there's lots of really good resources at that website. If you're going to go and teach at any point, that's a good place to start for info. Okay, let's get my PowerPoint pulled up here. Okay, everybody can see that? Good. All right. Okay. As I mentioned, the booklet goes birth through 5. We're just going to look at the preschool guidelines because that will be the age group that you will be observing later in the semester. Okay. So, why do they need to be active? We've got some serious problems now with overweight and obesity, not only in the adult and teenage populations, but also in prepubertal children. And we even have preschoolers occasionally who measure out and are in obese categories. This is a big problem because, you know, if you're obese as a child, especially a very young child, how do you become very competent in those fundamental motor skills that we've been looking at, right? And we need to have that competency, remember, in order to move on and be physically active as we get older. So it's a real problem that we're seeing this in children at such young ages now. Obesity in particular is tightly linked with certain serious health conditions, and by the age of 10 to 12 we're starting to see the beginnings of some heart disease, and some young children are developing type 2 diabetes, which used to be considered an adult onset disease, but now we have, as I said, really late puberty, early teens are developing type 2 diabetes. So that's a big problem because you don't really cure type 2 diabetes. Once you've got it, you have to manage it then for the rest of your life. Okay? We also know that children who are sedentary tend to become adults who are sedentary or low active for a number of reasons, but one of which goes back to our fundamental motor skills again. You know, if I'm sedentary as a child and I don't learn those skills well, then I don't have the foundation to become a highly active adult. And I probably don't have the motivation either because I don't like moving because it's not fun, because it isn't easy, right? So we have this kind of spiral of impact. So the first guideline that the that the SHAPE and NASB give us is that preschoolers, so we're talking 3 to 5s, okay, should accumulate at least 60 minutes of daily planned physical play. So this isn't outdoor playtime, right? This is a specific planned session that is set up to improve their fundamental motor skills and their physical activity levels. All right? So during planned physical play, we're going to have lots of options. When you observe later in the semester, you'll see I have lots of toys, makes the playground a really fun place to be. And then we let the children explore the toys. We try to encourage certain movement patterns from them. I have a setup that I call the running road with lots of toys, and we run a lot, and sometimes we leap, and we have obstacle courses, and we have little foam tennis type paddles. Lots and lots of options for playing with fundamental motor skills. So it's important that we use developmentally appropriate equipment. So I mentioned the foam paddle. There's no point in putting out tennis rackets for 3 to 5-year-olds, but I want them to swing, right, and hit a ball. So I also have some soft, squishy baseball bats that we use sometimes, and I have these, they're like lollipops, but with a foam sucker on the top, right, and they can smack at the ball with that. So it's got to be colourful, it's got to be small enough that they can manage it, right? We can't be giving them full-size equipment if we want them to be successful at moving, and that's a key, remember. If you're not successful, then you're unlikely to interpret it as fun. And if it isn't fun, then we don't do it. We try to opt out somehow. We go and sit down in the sand pit, right? And play making pizzas or something. So it's important that we keep it fun, and for fun it has to be successful, okay? Right, so this last point on this slide is a tricky one for you as a population, all right? Most of you are either competitive athletes or regularly physically active, and you probably push yourselves quite hard. And so for me to tell you that now we have to go to the playground and play in a way that is not competitive can be very tricky for HPE students, all right? And even for me, and I've been doing it forever, right? And even then, sometimes I find myself saying, okay, let's see who can get to the fence first, right? Yeah, no, I just made it a competition, right? Let's all jump as hard as we can, or let's all run as fast as we can. That makes it non-competitive, right? The minute I put the goal in there, let's get to the fence first, the kid that is at the back knows they didn't get to the fence first, right? And we come back to it, it's not very fun. It's not appropriate with this age group to incorporate competition. Cognitively, it's really not appropriate until they're 7 or 8, and that's if they're well developed cognitively and socially. Competition brings up all kinds of problems with this age group, so it's really best to, as much as we can, promote them trying as hard, right? That's important. That they need to understand that if they want to be successful, they've got to try as hard as they can, and they have to keep practicing. So those two ideas, it's really good to incorporate. It's just the win-lose thing that can cause a lot of problems at this age. at any age, to be honest, with the majority of people. So these are just some examples of some of the toys you will see, sadly, on the video this semester since you're not here. All right. The second guideline is that as well as our planned physical play, children of this age group should be getting a minimum of an hour a day, preferably more, of daily unplanned physical play. So that's when you open the door of the classroom and you go, okay kids, out onto the playground, off you go, let's have fun, right? And that's free play, that's autonomous. Doesn't mean you can't also put out some toys for them and see what they do with them, right? But there's a difference between the planned, where you're deliberately manipulating the environment to get them to practice particular skills, and free play, where they get to go and do what they want to do. Not that they don't want to do the planned stuff, but this way you're not manipulating them, right? At no point during the day should preschoolers be sedentary for more than an hour at a time, and personally I think an hour is too long, unless they're asleep. So like afternoon nap time, then if they are napping for longer than an hour, that's okay. I'm not going to wake them up and make them move. But when we're in the classroom and we're doing sand play, or we're doing reading, or we're doing practicing our numbers, or whatever we're doing, they shouldn't be sitting still for more than an hour. And as I said, in my personal opinion, an hour is way too long. An hour is too long for me, right? I think it's too long for a preschooler. I'm not a qualified early childhood teacher though, so I'll add that caveat there. So our take-home message then between Guideline 1 and Guideline 2 is that it's really important that preschoolers move. And given the overweight and obesity issues, it's really important now, right? Even more so, that we get them not just competent at their fundamental motor skills, but physically active on a regular basis, okay? You have to get their little heart rates up. So non-planned physical play can be outdoor play structures. So on our playground we have a big climbing rock. They've got a huge big piece of green equipment that has slides on it and ladders to climb up and tunnels to crawl through. They've of course got a swing set which can create a lot of sedentary behavior, so I don't allow the swing set during PE. Guideline 3, develop competence in movement skills that are building blocks for more complex movement tasks. Ta-da! Okay, this is what we have already been talking about this semester. All right, so on our fundamental motor skills, we want to get them to, if I'm looking at an MSU chart, we want to get them as far along towards the right stages as we can. And if we're looking at our TGMD, we want them scoring yeses on as many characteristics for as many skills as we can. So we haven't done a lot about sequencing yet, but skipping as a locomotor skill involves stepping and hopping. So it's important that we work on running and hopping before we really kind of drill on skipping if we're going to. Skipping is an interesting task. It should not be, there shouldn't be a sex bias, but there tends to be a sex bias. People often think of skipping as a girly skill, and it is noticeable on the playground that the girls who go to ballet skip quite well versus everybody else. So that's a bit of a shame. The boys should be going to ballet as well, as far as I'm concerned. But skipping is a combination skill. It's quite complicated from a brain controlling and coordination point of view, and we'll look at this later on in the class when we get to chapter 5, I think it is. Okay. Now, guideline 4 isn't one that we, as a class and a lab situation, have any control over. But I like to show it because I think a lot of you are going to be parents at some point, and so understanding what the expectation for a childcare centre is might help you make a choice of childcare centre if you ever have to go that route. So guideline 4 is about the environment. So there should be indoor and outdoor areas that meet, preferably exceed, the safety standards for performing large muscle activities. So we have a huge playground at the CDC. We do not have an indoor motor skill area, unfortunately. We nearly got one, and then the plans all fell through, which was a bit of a shame. Right, so what are we talking about when we say these safety standards? So for outside on a playground, there should be 75 square feet per child. So that is quite a large amount of space, okay? And what you'll notice when you come back to town, as you're going around town, keep an eye out on some of the childcare centres that are scattered around Portales. And you'll see that we're probably the only one that meets that standard, right? Some of them have minuscule outdoor play areas, minuscule, right? So there's many problems with that, because if the space is tiny, the teacher's reaction is very often, no, don't run, you're going to fall over and hit your head, right? Let's walk, let's stay slow, let's play carefully. Well, we don't want them to play carefully, right? We want them to run and jump and fall and do all these things, because that's part of learning motor skills, right? So a small playground can have a big impact on motor skill development for this age group. Indoor, they need 35 square feet per child. So it can be quite a lot smaller. I'm not sure. I think if they took all the furniture out of the classroom, they would probably meet this. But with all the furniture and the bookshelves and the paint easels and the lunchtime tables and all that, there's not very much space left. They do manage in both sides of the classroom to have a great big rug that they do some yoga exercises and some dancing and things like that. So that's nice, but it really isn't enough room. Like, you can't allow the children really to run or to jump much indoors, even at the CDC. And that's an excellent childcare centre, right? Because it's a lab school and it's providing a laboratory for students to go and study children. So it's a really great facility, and it still doesn't really, as I say, if we had got our indoor gym, we'd have been well away there. Guideline 5. So guideline 5 would be parents or primary caregivers or preschool teachers, or when we're out on the playground, us, right? So individuals who are responsible for the preschoolers should be aware of how important physical activity and competence at these motor skills really is. And that's a big beef for me in New Mexico. When I was in grad school in Alabama, I taught this class to early childhood students, not HPE students. Because in Alabama, they're required to take this class, which is a good thing because they got to go and be the people who are hands-on with the children, right? In New Mexico, although they're required to teach movement on their curriculum once they're in a childcare center, there's no requirement to take motor development to learn how to teach movement skills, which is asinine, right? They don't send early childhood teachers out to teach reading and not teach them how to teach reading or writing or numbers. But they're supposed to teach movement, but they don't teach them how to teach movement. This drives me bonkers, right? So, teachers, parents, or primary caregivers should be able to facilitate learning. So we have to understand what to expect with motor skills, right? We've got to understand those stages so that we're developmentally appropriate when we're facilitating their learning of the skills. We're not expecting them to do something they can't do, right? Because in my head I've got this picture, right? We have to give them time. It's important to allow toddlers and preschoolers time to explore the equipment. And they'll often not do what you expect them to do with the equipment, okay? And so then you have to make a decision. Is what they're doing still useful? Is it dangerous? Do I need to intervene and get them back on track? Can I let them keep playing with what they're doing because their little brain is learning something I had not expected? Right? Got to provide positive reinforcement. So again, I think this counts with any age group, to be quite frank, even old adults. It's really important that you praise people for doing well or for trying hard, even if the outcome wasn't very good, right? So we've got to always remember to be positive, right? Recognize the thing that they did well, and then try to help them correct the thing that wasn't quite so good, okay? And we're going to talk a lot more about modeling, but we have to model physical activity. We have to provide that brain a picture of what the skill is supposed to look like and what physical activity looks like so that it can copy that, right? So we have to model. We don't go out there and just stand there like this, right, and watch the kids play. We have to actually get in there and play, right? You have to crawl through the tunnel. You've got to climb up the net. You've got to do the running. You've got to do the hitting with the little paddle and bend your knees because everything's too small. Right? You have to be engaged on the playground and model what you want the children to do. And you have to enjoy it, right? Understand how important it is and enjoy it. And that's the thing that is fun about that HPE students. students that was difficult with the early childhood students, right? They got the non-competitive thing, they got you know, a lot of the understanding about the theories of how little children learn, but they weren't moving people. They were early childhood people, right? And not very many of them were athletes. So when I get them onto the playground, they kind of stand there. The great thing about the HPE students is sometimes I have to damp down the excitement and the competitiveness, but asking you guys to go and throw a ball or kick a ball or jump on a bouncy ball is a load of fun, and everybody plays, right? And that's just a reminder, non-competitive, depending on their age, when we do our play development lecture, you'll see that asking them to cooperate may or may not be developmentally appropriate, right? If they're 5, it's typically appropriate to ask them to cooperate. If they're 3, yeah, probably not, unless they're very advanced, right? So these are just some ideas of things. So children, particularly younger children, are naturally active. It's very rare, does happen, but it is rare that we get a child come out on the playground and refuse to join in, right? They may not join in initially because they're shy. They may not join in initially because they're being a little pill and they're going to stamp their foot and do what they want to do. There's all kinds of reasons. But ultimately, all those children join in, right? It's very, very rare that you get a young child that hates to move, right? That's why I like that age group, because it's just the best fun. Because they all want to play, right? What you have to remember as the adult is they've got little hearts and little lungs, right? So you can't ask them to run around the running road 10 times in a row, because most of them can't manage that, right? And they're quite good at dropping out of their own accord. But you have to let them drop out when they're ready to drop out and go try something, get their breath back, maybe go over to the throwing target and throw some balls for a little while until they are ready to run again, right? And as we will continue to highlight, there is a lot of learning that can go on through movement exploration, all right? These children are learning about their bodies, obviously, but they're also learning spatial concepts, they're learning shapes, they're learning edges, right? They're learning about over and under, they're learning colours, they're learning fruits and foods, okay? So you can incorporate all those kind of other classroom-y type concepts on the playground in PE. And you can reinforce some of the things that are going on in the classroom. So, this statement I mentioned last week, I've got a little bit of research for you to look at. The research says that the fundamental motor skills that we've been looking at should be competent, they should be learned and competent before the children leave for kindergarten. Okay? So, that obviously is not happening, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be throwing ipsilaterally, okay? So, we have the research on the development of the brain that says this is what needs to happen for movement. But we don't have it happening Because a lot of the time, right, a kindergarten, a preschool can't afford to pay a PE teacher to come and teach PE, and the people who are trained to be the teachers at the preschool aren't getting movement experience. So it's not happening, and so then we feed these children to kindergarten and then into elementary PE, and they can't catch a ball. And the elementary PE teacher has to waste a pile of time teaching them to catch a ball before they can introduce any kind of game that involves catching, right? When they should have been able to catch by now, okay? Got to keep it fun. Got to be fun, right? Always fun. Even as adults. What's the point of going and playing tennis if it's not fun? Right? I don't have to be there. I could be doing 101 other things. So if it's not fun, why bother? Right? That's why I don't run anymore. My dad used to make me run when I was little. I hated it then. I hated it when my coaches made me run. I hated it when I made myself run. And then when I got to my 40th birthday, I'm like, why am I running? I'm 40, I can do what I like. So I don't run anymore. So, questions before I show you the next piece. Any questions on that? Or thoughts? Or experiences with little family members that would support this information? Nothing? God, you lot are a hard sell. Okay, let's see. That's what I want. Let's make this one bigger. Okay, so this article is in your lab notes, and I want you to make sure to read it through. It's a very simple read. It was written for practitioners, even though it talks a lot about research, it makes it very easy to read. And what this article talks about is some brain development research surrounding motor skills that is linked to the concept of windows of opportunity. Okay? And the windows of opportunity are, some books will call them critical periods. There's a couple of different names, but the windows of opportunity is the point in time when that little brain can best learn a particular kind of skill. Not the only time they can learn it, but the best time for learning it, right? So for example, if you want a child to be bilingual, the best time to learn a second language is before the age of 8, right? After the age of 8, can I learn a second language? Yes, right? Most of us have to in school, okay? But it gets harder to learn that second language unless you've really got a knack for it, right? But for most of us, learning a second language is torturous, okay? So we have a similar situation with gross and fine motor skills. So our gross motor skills are our big playground skills, right? So the window of opportunity for that little brain to best learn their fundamental motor skills shuts at between the age of 5 and 6. That's why in the PowerPoints I said that they had to be competent at their fundamental motor skills before they leave for kindergarten, right? Because that window is closing down then. Right? Now, can they still learn fundamental motor skills? Yes. Especially if you're a good teacher and you provide a good environment, right? But it gets harder. And if you are not a child with a particular talent for moving, it gets harder, right? Now, fine motor skills, so more of our classroom type skills, right? Tying a bow, buttoning up our shirts, learning how to write our name, right? Fine motor skills, we've got longer there. The window of opportunity for fine motor skills closes between the age of 9 and 10. Right? The other item that the article talks a lot about is the idea of stimulating the little brain to make as many neural connections as possible. All right? So when we're born, and we'll go over this again, when we're born, all our brain cells are pretty much there. We don't grow a lot of brain cells once we're born. What does grow is all the connections, all the wiring system. So it's like like an electrical wiring telephone system. All the cells have to be able to talk to each other. So they all have to grow little wires that end up touching and talking and can chat to each other, all right? And what the brain research, so the equipment for looking at the brain has got so sophisticated and clever in the last 15, 20 years, right? And so now they can literally watch the cells of the brain talking to each other while they ask people to do certain things, right? And so what they see is that when we're little, before the age of 10, your brain is going berserk, wiring up all these connections and ideas, and that's why it's good to let them explore, because the more they explore, the more connections are made, right? The more experiences they get, the more connections the little brains make. Right? Then we get to the age of 10 and things change a little bit in the brain, right? So by the age of 10 we've overstuffed all this wiring system and we've got a pile of pathways that we really don't use very often, right? So from about the age of 10 the pruning shears come out, right? And the pathways that don't get used on a regular basis get snipped and go away, right? So we have to keep providing lots of movement activities and movement experiences so that it isn't the movement pathways that get the snip. Okay? So, make sure you read this article. Right? It's, as I said, it is full of research which makes it very valid, very believable, but it's also been written in a practitioner way, so it's real easy for you guys to read. All right? So make sure that you get that read. And that's what I have for you today. So questions on any of that? Brent, no questions?
No, ma'am.
God.
sense to me.
Are you going to do it though?
Definitely.
Right? One of the things that I like to recommend to HPE students, because of the situation that we've got in preschool and childcare centres, is that if you have need to do some community service of some kind, right, if that makes you feel good, then going to your local childcare centre or preschool and offering 1 day a week or 1 day every 2 weeks or whatever you have the time to do to take the children out on the playground and work on their fundamental motor skills would be a really great way to fill that service or volunteering need that you have. Okay? All right, well, I'm done. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy. I will see you on Monday, all right? And Monday, I can't remember what we're doing on Monday. What day is Monday? Monday is it the 2nd of February? First of February? Okay, 1st of February. All right, oh my God, we're in February already. Jeez. Okay, well, pat yourselves on the back. You made it through 2 weeks. Excellent. Keep going. Stay on top of your reading. Stay on top of your assignment deadlines. All right? I know it's hard when you're at home. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to think, oh, I've got plenty of time to get that done. All right? Stay on top of it. Okay? All right. See you next week.